watch this movie?
In my younger years, I will say over 10. In my elder years, I will say at least 3 to 5.
Okay. Now, I got to be honest with you. Up until the other night, I never had watched all of this movie all the way through. And I rewatched part of the ending tonight. So I'd heard about this my entire life. I had heard about this being a, the cult classic that it is. My sisters were scared of it as a kid. And I know there were always jokes around the house about the clowns from the killer clowns from outer space. And I knew what they looked like, but I never was. Were you ever afraid of clowns?
No, never been afraid of clowns. It's hilarious. The movie is hilarious.
I think so too. Now, you were afraid of more like sharks, not sharks, but whales and things.
Yes, I didn't see Castaway.
That I don't think there were any whales in Castaway.
Yes, there was.
Just one, but I mean, he's not.
That was enough.
He's not really confronted with it, I don't think, though. So I know clowns. A lot of people do have that phobia of the clowns, and if you remember a couple of years back, I guess the late 2017, 18s, where clowns were just randomly showing up around. Remember that? They were
I believe that was a hoax. I believe that was an internet hoax.
I think it was set up to coincide and do it together. I think they were like, okay, let's just try to create something creepy.
I mean, you can have 10 people in different parts of the world have the same idea at the same time.
Yeah.
And it seems like, oh, that's so crazy and coincidental, but not really.
Yeah, I agree with you. So you said you had seen this movie as a child. Now, did it hold any kind of... What was your first memory of this, other than watching it? Like, do you remember... What's your memory from that?
Well, my first memory would be watching it with my siblings, who most of them were much older.
Right.
I can't remember if my younger brother was scared of it or not. Probably not.
Now, were you?
No.
Okay, so what age this came out in? What did you say? What did we say? 1988?
I would have been 6.
6 years old. So this would have been a time where you possibly could have been a little bit timid around this because you were a meek child.
I actually was a meek child. I was very, very timid, very, very quiet.
So,
whoa, how the tables have turned.
Yes. I mean, you're coming off meek and quiet and well-spoken here on the show tonight, so that's always great for the audience. But little does the audience know, she's not always this way.
That's unfair.
Anyway, let's get back to the topic.
There's a carnival outside. There could be killer clowns outside.
That is true.
That is exactly this moment.
That is true. So I didn't have the fortunate of memory of watching this as a kid. I would have been, what did we say, 1988 or 89?
I think you said 88, but I could have sworn it was 89.
It could have been 89, filmed in 88.
I'm going to say 89. That I could check that fact real quick because my mother would not have let me watch that.
So this was something that ran a lot. So you saw this, I'm guessing on like Sci-Fi or Comedy Central, something like that?
No, I do believe I rented it from Star Video.
Okay, it's 1988. So did you have it, like when you were younger, did you and your family go out often and rent movies like the video store on the weekend?
Yes, we did.
Now, what were some of the ones that you, can you hand me that pen? What were some of the ones that you have a memory of?
Well, there's this one, and there's another one, and it's, what's exactly the name? Is it Killer Bimbos from Outer Space?
Oh, it's the Flying Bimbos, isn't it?
No, that was an embarrassing one to watch because it was with my father and my sister, and there was a little bit of nudity that popped up, and we just got silent in the living room.
Now, we had looked it's Assault of the Killer Bimbos.
Yes.
Also,
but they were from like outer space as well.
Were they? No, this also came out in 1988 as well. So 1988 was the big year for things coming down from space, whether it be clowns or killer bimbos. Or killer clowns, killer bimbos. Now, what do you remember from the Killer Bimbos movie?
They were scantily dressed. They had guns, and it was a lot of like slapney comedy that was I
Kind
don't
of
know,
raunchy?
kind of raunchy and crude. And I know you hate that word, but
Crude.
like yes, but
Have you ever watched the movie The Croods?
no, I have
There's
not.
two of them. There's two of them.
No, I have not.
And the Crude leader is or father is voiced by one of my favorites, Nicolas Cage. So we'll have to do Assault on Killer Bimbos on the sideshow because you mentioned that once before, and I
I
do
don't think
want.
many people have heard of this movie.
I never had heard of it before, and you actually stumped me because for the most part, I've heard. I mean, how many movies would you think have been made in the world? 500,000. How many movies do you think exist?
in the world out of billions of people.
Let's just say in America. How many American movies do you think have different titles?
Millions.
You think millions?
Millions.
And nobody has ever
we
heard
cannot discredit like the home movie makers, the independent film makers, like actual movies in the millions.
Exactly. Now, this made me think of the movie Killer Tomatoes. Have you ever watched?
Oh, I've seen Killer Tomatoes too.
Now, my mom, when I was younger, she purchased a VHS copy of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes with a young George Clooney in the actual movie. Have you seen that one?
I have. I have. I had forgotten about that one, but I can remember clearly the VHS cover.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So, this one is Killer Klowns from Outer Space. We said it came out in 1988. Directed by Stephen Chiodo. Chiodo?
Giotto?
Chiodo. Now, you were telling me a little bit of information about him and his brothers and siblings. So tell us a little bit about what you've discussed.
It's actually, I think Stephen is the older of three brothers, and they were the actually ones that wrote the movies.
Okay.
Or maybe, is Stephen really the director, or was it Paul?
Now, according to IMDb, it was Stephen.
Okay, the director?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But it seemed like there were
But
three
it was
different ones.
Yes, there's three
of them.
different brothers. I could have thought maybe Paul Rich. I don't know. I could be throwing those out of my head. But the three writers were actually three brothers working together. Stephen was the eldest, and the middle one was the main writer.
Okay.
And I do believe
Now, it says like there's three brothers: Charles, Anthony, Stephen Joseph, and Edward Michael.
So Charlie, which I think Chiodo, which that plays in the movie.
Right.
I think he's the only brother that makes an appearance.
Which one was the one that played in the movie?
Charlie. I think he went by Charlie, not Charles.
He plays
Chiodo.
JoJo the Clownzilla.
the Clownzilla, which is one of the main clowns in the movie.
Right.
But there is a third brother, like a younger brother. They all three wrote this together. That seems like a fun sibling project. And
It does seem like one because they gathered together around $1.2 to $2 million.
And I would think at that time they would possibly be in their younger, like 20s and early 30s or something like that. Like if I can remember the birthdays correctly, just based upon what I know about Stephen Chiodo, the director, who I think, I don't know. I think his latest thing was Screamers, if that makes sense.
It could have been. Now, Buffy was saying, she's tuning in on Facebook right now, that this movie also features Suzanne Snyder, who starred in the movie Weird Science.
That is true.
And I do remember...
She plays Debbie.
Yes.
Which is the main character girlfriend that tries to convince the police that these alien clowns have showed up in a tent.
Yes. Now, this has a cast of... Would you say this is a cast? No, you have to understand this, the audience, that this is a cast from 1987, released in 1988. And I don't know, for the most part, if most people would know these particular names. I think these are people you would recognize some of their faces, but not their names. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And I also would agree with there wasn't enough, like, there's not really enough IMDb credit for all of the clowns. There were like multiple different clowns with all kinds of, well, slapstick names.
Yes.
Kind of like immature, like brothers could be together writing this movie. A lot of adult innuendo that happens throughout the whole movie.
Yes,
and
there
the dialogue and everything. So it's
Now I did read.
it's not a scary movie.
Now I did read that there were each clown had a specific name: Jumbo, Fatso, Shorty, Rudy, Spiky, Slim, Bebo, Chubby, Joe, Bibbo,
Bibbo.
Bibbo, Chubby, Joe, Magori, Talls, Storefront, Frank, Boko or Baco, B-O-C-O, Female Killer Clown, and it's...
Female killer clowns. There were actually two, and there's a little. If you've seen this movie and this classic, there's this theory out there that the female clowns actually didn't come from outer space.
Right.
When they could actually cocoon the females and actually turn them into killer clowns as well.
That's what
I think, like Debbie, so like Suzanne Snyder and all of that. Like, there's this whole idea that those two characters that acted very adult suggestively
Yes.
and I actually don't think they killed anybody, these female clowns, like, but just like came on to and made out with them, like that maybe they were women of the night.
Right. Now, I did read that exact same thing, that the female clowns were actually the female humans.
I thought it was a theory that wasn't really actually explained.
I don't think it was explained. I think it was left to the audience, but I'm with you. That's what I believe happened, because a couple of research things that I did suggested that as well. You had baby clown killer clowns, Clownzilla.
Oh, you should tell them where the baby killer clowns come from. The popcorn that pops out of their guns.
Who grow from the popcorn.
They grow from the popcorn. Those are the seeds of new little baby clowns. So they're not from outer space.
Did that make popcorn kernels and popcorn seem a little more gross to you at all?
Negative.
No?
Negative, but it makes sense. But then the baby clowns wouldn't be from outer space. They're naturalized citizens, right?
Seems like they would be.
Yeah.
We've got Baldo, Bazooka, and Spikerel, I think. So there are several different clowns, and each clown is like...
Spickerel?
Speakerel, yes. And the clown that is on the cover of most of the promotional material only makes a brief cameo within the movie. He's not in the movie all that much. And every clown is just like a unique snowflake. No two clowns in this movie
Which
are
one?
the same.
Which one had the mohawk? I think that's one made a brief appearance, and I think that's the one that's on the cover, but the storyline he doesn't have much storyline.
No,
There were
not
a lot
much
of,
at all.
I think he was like a clown guard
Yeah.
of the tent or something. Like, there were ones that only showed up briefly,
Just to make kind of a cameo appearance, so to speak, for the most part.
so to speak.
So we've got Grant Kramer as Mike Tobacco, Suzanne Snyder as Debbie Stone, John Allen Nelson as Officer Dave Hansen, John Vernon as Officer Curtis Mooney, and he was really one of the only ones besides Suzanne Snyder that I had recognized. We've got Royal Dano as Farmer Gene Green, Charles Chiato as Jojo the Clownzilla, and Christopher Titus as Bob McReed. And if anyone knows or recognizes Christopher Titus's name, he's a stand-up comedian. He's been in a couple of films, TV shows, and the most notable one named Titus, which came out, I think, in late 90s, maybe mid 2000s. So the facts of the night are the $2 million budget went primarily on the production costs. The clowns and the visual effects were created almost entirely by the filmmakers at very little cost. So almost all the money from the budget of this movie went into the actual production and the making of this movie. Though not a hit in theaters, the film has since become a cult classic and made revenue in action figures, DVDs, T-shirts, as well as an assortment of animatronics and other decorations from Spirit Halloween. So this is something that you can go into the Spirit Halloween store and actually see the costumes of these clowns. And I don't think in 1988 when they were making this movie that they would think 20, 30, 40 years later that it would still be a phenomenon that people can go and dress up. Would you think that
Yes, absolutely. I have the T-shirt.
do you think that the Chiodo brothers thought this though when creating this movie that it would have this long of an impression? Because I don't think they had that foresight.
I'm not sure, other than like maybe I think they have like casting and costume companies mostly now in the business, or something like that, where some sort of help in production.
Right.
No really other movies that they've put out like individually. I think they might have been part of a few shows, like just like cameos, like one or two of them, like maybe like The Simpsons or something like that. I could be wrong.
Right. Now there were a few little director Stephen Chiodo had directed a few other short films, but this has been his only feature film.
Well, that's a perfect one to start with and a perfect one to end with, considering how much money it's made.
Now, I personally, though, if it were me, I would want to continue and make something else. I know that he's been involved in like writing, like you said, voice actor, doing his other things, but directing. I think I'd like to see what he would have come up with next, just to see if it would have been similar to this.
Maybe it was just a childhood dream.
Could have been.
That they talked about through years in their childhood of these brothers, that they brought to life and just springformed from there and did other careers within Hollywood or maybe outside of Hollywood. I haven't really looked into.
I haven't either.
Personal
I'd
lives
never
too
really
much.
heard of them before this movie, to be honest with you. Another fact is the car chase in which the clown is driving an invisible car was meant to be shown before the opening credits. The character driving the car is Joe Lombardo, whom Mike and Debbie find in a cotton candy cocoon several scenes earlier in the film. Another tidbit of factoid is the first day of recording the music score took place on Halloween 1987. So that means that part of this movie was filmed in 1987 and 1988 and was released to the public in 1988 as well. The budget was $2 million, and what I could find is that this movie only made about $200,000 or $300,000 in the movie theater itself. But years later, it's brought in over $40 to $50 million with DVDs, costumes, memorabilia, all these things. So it's turned into quite the attraction and quite the film over the years. And this actually surprised me as well, is although, we know Rotten Tomatoes didn't exist back in the 80s like this, it has an 81% positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes and an audience score of 61%. And the IMDb is right in the middle at 6.2% on Internet Movie Database. So let's basically get into a little bit of the plot from the movie. Now, the plot of this movie is pretty basic. Several teens, and they do look a little bit older than teens, most of them, wouldn't you say?
As is common for most
Yes.
80s movies.
Yes, and I did
They
like
didn't
that.
really hire teens then.
No, it seemed like most were probably in their 20s, even late 20s perhaps. They're all at Makeout Cove, and I can't remember the exact name. So there's a lot of teens up there. They're with their girlfriend, with their boyfriend. And quite a few of them see what they think is a comet, a meteor, something like that,
Yes, and they follow it and
going through the sky.
they follow it and find the tent, but they kind of thought is it Ferenzi Brothers or like whatever, the two brothers that were driving the ice cream truck?
Yes.
Yeah, like initially they thought it had something to do with them, which was really funny. And how like that, like I said, the adult innuendo. They go up there on this notorious makeout cove, and they're like,
And the brothers
they
are
had
in
like
this ice cream truck.
yes, and they had this special, lick a stick stuff like that, like just random, random ice creams they were advertising. That was I mean, I guess, what rating was this movie? I can't recall.
What rating? This was rated. I'm trying to find it. I would imagine it's rated probably.
I mean, there's no nudity. There's adult language, and in that time, adult language. But there was a lot of adult.
Is there a lot of
innuendo.
adult language though? Not a whole lot though, is
Not a
there?
whole lot, but like, yeah, it's just in general sexual innuendo that would have made it even like what the clown said and all of this.
It was rated PG-13.
13.
Yeah, yeah. It might be an R rating today. Would you think so? Possibly.
No, because I think a lot of the talk, because it was so smartly done in a way that like it double entendres
Yeah.
to where you could take it one way or the other. And if I could just think of quotes right now, I would be glad to do that. I cannot. I think.
Well, I mean, for one, I mean, one of the memorable lines, including "I'm JoJo the ice cream clown. We'll give you a stick, you'll give it a lick."
Yes.
That was kind of one of the sayings that
Yes.
was within the ice
Yes,
cream.
that's
It'll
it
tickle
too.
you all the way down.
Yes.
So there were a couple little things like that thrown throughout the film.
And that would be like brother humor, I think, just bleeding into them talking about it, especially if as they're writing it when they're younger.
Yeah, I would
in
agree
that
with
day.
you. I
Just
would
to
agree
kind
with
of
you on
put
that.
kind of put that like har
Hardy har har kind of. Now
Yeah.
this basic plot of this movie is simple. There's characters that see this circus tent that they think is in the middle of the woods, basically, and there are killer clowns from outer space, as the title says, wreaking havoc on the small town as these teenagers are trying to stop it. Wouldn't you say basically that's the plot?
Basically, that's the plot. But you have the big antagonist of Officer Curtis Mooney.
And he's one of the only actors in this movie I'd seen in other things besides Suzanne.
But his serious, no nonsense, his dialogue was actually quite hilarious.
His dialogue was hilarious.
There's a specific sentence. I would actually have to grab my phone and that he said that was. I mean, and you're talking like you can gather it's from a southern town, a rural town, or at least a rural town, maybe southern, how they talk, especially with the farmer Joe.
Yeah.
With his dog that goes up.
And he's
like,
he's the first quote
it's
victim.
almost like these people are too dumb to realize that these clowns are real and they're coming after them.
I mean, one of Mooney's lines, he's like, he's in the, and this we'll get to this in a moment, but he's talking to, there's a lot of calls coming into the station about these killer clowns, and he's not taking any of their calls seriously. So one
He's
of his
been into the business too long. He
Yeah.
survived Korea. If you didn't think he could handle this BS, I think that might have been one of the lines.
Yeah, and one of the lines is like, they took your wife away in a balloon. Well, you don't need a police pal.
You need a
psychiatrist.
That's what I remember.
Another
as
one
well.
was like, I'm supposed to read you your rights, but you're in Mooney's jail.
No, this one he uses.
And you
this
ain't got no
word,
rights.
Like he uses the word like not seen very often. I think it's almost
Terenzi brothers is what they're called.
Terenzi.
Yeah, Terenzi brothers.
Okay, I got an extra little short line on that.
But yeah, Mooney is a character, and he is not really. He wants the law upheld, but he wants it done. He has his own form of justice.
Yes.
He's not really by the book. He does things the way he wants, which would be perceived now as he's not really that good of a police officer.
No, he just is tired of his job. He doesn't care.
And he abuses the law.
He abuses his authority, of course.
Yes.
But police don't do that.
So, what about characters? Did you have any favorite characters? I mean, we've got... I thought everyone did a fairly decent job from what they had to work with. I mean, was there any standout characters for you?
I think the scariest of the clowns was JoJo, the Clownzilla.
The big one near the end.
Yeah, and that's actually played by one of the writers, Charlie Chiodo.
Yeah.
That would be it, except for my favorite part of this movie actually skips forward a few years, or maybe not even that many years.
Yeah.
But you know how I like Ernest P. Worrell.
Yes.
The masks from Killer Klowns from Outer Space were actually reused for the movie Ernest Scared Stupid.
Really?
Yeah, didn't know that.
I didn't know that. No, I saw
You're welcome.
I saw Ernest Scared Stupid in theaters as a kid.
Yeah, they reused the mask from Killer Klowns from Outer Space in that movie.
I did not know that. So what was one of your favorite scenes then?
I think one of my favorite scenes is where, because it just seems so funny, like when they go into the tent and they see all this stuff and they're just like, oh, come on. And, you got Mike Tobacco, which sounds like some guy with douchey money from his family.
I honestly didn't even realize his last name was...
trying to pick up a girl.
I didn't know his last name was Tobacco until...
And so Debbie, she's like being talked about going on into this. And I think where they describe the tent as, oh, this is like Clowns Are Us. Now that makes sense because Stephen, the older brother, would have been very, very young when Children's Superstore, which became a very, very popular isolated store, transformed into Toys R Us.
Right.
Just within his childhood, so many years later. So when that Clowns R Us are mentioned, I feel like he's throwing a little nod.
I think so too.
To the toy store.
Now, was that ever a place that you really visited as a kid, Toys R Us?
No.
Me either. I always saw commercials, but I've only...
I had 5 siblings. My parents weren't taking us into Toys R Us.
Well, I always remember, and I could be wrong, that Toys R Us seemed to be pricier than some of the other places that you could get toys. I remember thinking that as a kid.
I think I thought that too. Maybe I just grew up. I guess I did grow up poor.
I think I did too.
Or just.
I never went in.
Not spoiled.
I never went into Toys R Us until I was in my 20s. To be honest,
I was a teenager before I ever went into Toys R Us.
I was like 24.
And then I had to go back to buy for my child a specific Lego sets.
Which Lego set was it? Pirates of the Caribbean?
No, it was actually the Joker house.
Okay.
That came with Harley Quinn. And then there was another one, a Star Wars one, that came with General Grievous.
Harley Quinn, didn't Harley Quinn have really red lipstick with the sides?
Yes.
Thought so.
And then General Grievous came in a specific set that you could only get there. And my son was very interested in the minifigures as opposed to the actual whole set. He liked to collect the characters, and it's just too expensive of a deal to try to find the packs that they would come in. You'd have to buy so many. It's better just to find a set that comes with it.
Comes with it already.
Yeah, so that's my last foray into Toys R Us. Probably maybe within 3 years or so before they shut down.
When did they shut down? Mid-2010s?
Yes.
Seems like. That's what I thought.
Yes. So it matches up with my child's age, who would have been 6 or 7 when he would have wanted that.
Okay. Now, did you have a least favorite scene? Or did you say your favorite scene yet?
Yeah, so my favorite scene is when they referred to the thing as, and that just took us into that whole Toys
Oh
R
yeah,
Us
yeah, yeah.
foray.
What about your least favorite? Did you have a least?
Um, no, I like it when they all start jumping out of this really small car, like the clown
I
car.
like the yeah.
My least favorite
You
scene.
may not have one.
My least favorite scene is probably when Farmer Green.
Yeah,
They must have been on some green right in this.
Jane Green. Yeah,
Green. When he was looking for Pooh,
yeah.
his
The dog.
dog, and it just like opened up and it just like pulled him in,
They get
and
that
like,
little net and they scoop him
yes,
up.
and it's just like,
What did you think about that balloon dog that they had?
oh, that sniffed them out
Yeah.
after they shot the popcorn that was stuck to them.
Yes,
That was clever.
it was clever. I didn't expect that.
Especially for 1988 or 89, we're not agreeing on here. I seem to recall a different date, but
Just as a
I'm
80
not picking up my phone to look that up.
I mean, I'm right now. Wikipedia has it as 1988. Now, I did like the May 27th, 1988. I did like the scene where Curtis Mooney is made into a ventriloquist dummy.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was.
Oh yeah. Who did that to him? Was it Clownzilla that did that to him?
I don't think so. But I can't say. I'm not sure.
That's actually something. There's a specific clown that does that. That doesn't have. Or was it the one with the mohawk that I'm not?
I can't remember. And I also did like when the random teenager is standing there watching the little puppet show before they pull out the ray gun and shoot him.
It is 1988.
Yeah. So I don't know if I really had a least favorite scene though. Originally, when I watched this, I didn't like the movie at all. Like I thought it was stupid, to be honest with you. But I went back and I rewatched it and did a little bit more research, and I came to enjoy it for what it was, and I ended up liking it quite a bit because it was fun. It was a fun film to get into. Now, what did you think about the musical score that was playing throughout the movie?
And you said that started. I mean, I think the score is the only thing that gives it the horror vibe to it.
You think so?
Yes, like when you actually watch these characters and stuff like that, unless you just don't like the look of clowns, and obviously they're gross.
Yeah, they are grotesque. They each have like yellowish, sharp, pointy teeth.
Yeah, and all different, kind of like.
They're grotesque looking alien clowns. Like not one of them looks quote cute at all.
I have a question. At what point could we compare this movie? Remember the Garbage Pail Kids movie?
I did. I rented that as a kid.
Okay, like how those were all grotesque. Like maybe there was a time period right around there where
Grotesqueness was like
scary.
Yeah.
Because
and in style.
The Garbage Pail Kids was not scary.
No, they were just gross.
They were just gross, but a lot of kids were scared of them. I mean, I'm a little bit of a messy Tessie myself, but
Are you?
Yes, I am.
Ha!
Sorry, not sorry.
Now, Garbage Pail Kids was a big thing. It came out around originally released in 1985. Now, this is a side note. What do you think is the rarest Garbage Pail Kid card? It's from Series 1.
You're going to have to tell me. It could be the Booger Eater.
Nasty Nick.
Nasty Nick? Was he the one that like ate his boogers?
Let me see. I'm going to look up Nasty Nick right now and see. Nasty Nick seems to be first series 1985 tops. Seems to be kind of tame compared to some of the others. He's like a vampire Garbage Pail Kid holding a blonde doll. Nasty Nick. That's one of the most rare.
I think they just took Cabbage Patch Dolls and just went with that.
Turn them into grotesque things.
But that was like seemed to be like the horror of the day, like
kind
absurd,
of the thing
funny,
to do.
but like would scare kids. I guess that may be why it got a PG-13. And you want to know what? Looking at it now, it would not be an R. It would probably be PG.
Probably PG.
Because
there's nothing in it
Disney
much.
And Pixar movies and stuff like that, like they have a lot of adult innuendo in them and stuff like that just goes over kids' head.
Right.
In fact,
I agree.
SpongeBob does the same thing.
SpongeBob does.
Like most cartoons have adult comedy in it or adult jokes. That's just a kid's going to hear, but not going to like marinate on the meaning.
Right. Especially in this kind of film. Now, what did you think of the score? You said a little bit this is the only thing that kind of made it in a horror genre, you think?
Yes. If they could have just taken a note out of Morrison and Krieger's book, The Doors, and made it... Dun, 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 dun.
Right.
You know, it would have been... Because, let's be honest, I think The Doors was the first person that like integrated circus music into rock music.
Right.
It would have been, they probably wouldn't have gotten that contract, but like it would have probably matched up to like, it's not leading up to a scary moment. It's leading up to an absurd,
very absurd,
just gross, but it's not even really that gross.
Not really.
Maybe we've just grown out of it because these movies just started like that during the 80s.
Now, I thought this was I thought the score for this was pretty good. It was had a very circus-ish theme, like running out. But with that askew sensibility, like, listen, that's not your traditional circus. That's circus instruments
the bass and all of that are just it's
kind of uneasy in a way, whimsical, uneasy. Especially if you've seen these clowns and you know what they look like.
Knowing it now, it's still funny, but that knowing it then, that was the only thing that made it kind of like creepy.
Right. I would agree with you.
I don't think ever being creeped out by watching the movie.
Now, what do you think was the, would you call this movie an original movie? Originality.
What can you name in your infinite movie knowledge that did the same? Well, no, I can actually say a lot for my knowledge. I think the portrayal of the clowns and the characters, which again are slapstick characters, they're named all like Shorty, Chubby, Fatty.
Right.
Like, and Slim and stuff like that. So like the based upon like their looks and not like giving them like real names.
Right.
But the look of these clowns, these alien clowns, which I don't think were probably from like this whole government of aliens out there. I think they were just rogue aliens.
What's funny, I think
they
so
were rogue
too.
Aliens.
Because if you think about it, the aliens' planet or anything like that's never discussed.
I think they just came by for a quick
murder spree.
They were just hungry.
Yeah.
And like you're stopping in a Sonic to eat. You got to stand there and wait a while to catch what you want,
right?
Or get what you want, or get what you ordered.
Now, you have to also think, back in the 80s, there were a lot of these type movies. I mean, you had The Blob, you had Critters, Dolls, you know.
I like Critters.
Now, Critters continued for many, many years. Now, I've only seen the very first Critters, but there had, you know, it continued for many, many years. And, you know, movies like this were around quite a bit in that time as well. So I think it was fairly original. It was fun. Now, did you look at the poster of this Killer Klowns from Outer Space? And if so, what did you actually think about the poster, because I thought the poster pretty much represented this movie very, very well. Because you've got a couple of different ones. You've got one where you've got, it looks like the clown is spinning the world on its finger. And then another very popular one was just I can't remember which clown it was, but just the clown's face. And then you've got MGM Presents Midnight Movies, and then it's just, in space, no one can eat ice cream, is the tagline of this movie, which I didn't know that before this.
You didn't know that before this.
I didn't realize that
That's
was
a line in the movie, and I think it's the same officer, Curtis Mooney, that says that.
Yeah.
In the movie. He's actually the one that actually says the title of the movie. I know
Yes.
that he quotes and says, "So you're telling me killer clowns from outer space?"
Yes.
Blah blah blah. Like he actually titles the movie within his dialogue.
I think so. And I thought that he is there any character that didn't make it that you thought was going to make it through the movie?
I fell asleep during the end the other night when I was watching it, and I have this movie on DVD. I actually purchased it for my child when he turned 4.
Right.
Because you got to raise them right. And I still have that DVD. Does Dave Hansen make it? The other officer that was actually in love with Debbie, as opposed to Mike,
the blonde one.
the blonde officer.
He does.
The one that actually believes her at the beginning, and you can tell he believes her because he kind of has a thing for her, and he doesn't like seeing her with this other guy.
Well, I get the feeling that him and her had a past together.
I don't think.
Or has he always just pined for her?
Just probably always pined is what I felt.
And it seems like a lot of these characters actually, kind of went the distance and stepped up and,
He kind of like shooed away Mike Tobacco's story part of it and didn't want to listen to him. But as long as Debbie, Suzanne Snyder,
right.
said anything, he paid attention, and he was kind of doing it all for her.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think out of anything, the theme is this unrequited love, going through this whole ordeal of killer clowns and fighting them off to save her.
Because if you think they're in the ship,
Because it's too just outrageous for him to believe, except for he believed in her.
Well, if you think with, I guess it's to Mike Tobacco, Debbie, and Dave, they're in the ship as it's starting to take off. Debbie and Mike get out. The officer, Dave, is still in there, distracting them so they can get out. He ends up getting picked up by JoJo, the Clownzilla, correct? He pulls out his badge or something and then hits him in the nose, and the entire spaceship explodes.
So he saves the day.
He saves the day. And he survives because as it explodes, he's in something that makes him...
He's in the cotton candy. Was he ever put in the cotton candy?
I don't think he was put in the cotton candy.
Because that's how they ate the humans.
Yeah. But the brothers
They were just hungry.
They were very hungry killer clowns. They had an appetite that couldn't be quenched.
I think they were just came to collect a few cotton candy snacks and then to leave Earth.
And be on their merry way.
No harm, no foul.
I agree. So, what's your final words about killer clowns from outer space?
I think if you haven't seen this movie, or if you haven't shown your child this movie and you saw it as you were younger, it's just like I did with mine. It's one of those that you can... I don't think it's going to scare them about clowns if you could just be like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And then the fact that you can take one of a cult classic like Killer Clowns and then tie it into another cult classic, because I like all of the Ernest P. Worrell films. I love them all. And that's the one movie that like...
What's your favorite one? The very first Ernest or Saves Christmas?
Well,
Scared Stupid.
We wouldn't even have Christmas if Ernest didn't save it back. And actually, I do believe it was that same year, 1988.
That was a good year for fun movies, wasn't it?
Check that fact on me.
Let's check that out.
Kids these days just don't even appreciate, do they?
No, they don't.
It could've been
1988. You're correct. It was
Yeah.
1988. I guess the last time I'd seen that was a couple years back, maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
I would highly suggest any of you of your listeners to watch this movie. It is free right now on what? Tubi? Freebie?
I think so.
One of those. After you watch it, I think you should check out your local, trade-in stores, or if you see it in the $5 bin at Walmart.
That would be one if you can find that to hold on to, because I wouldn't imagine a lot of copies of that are hanging around, to be honest with you.
It would have been 13 years ago when I bought the last copy, and I do believe I had to order it off Amazon. It was not something you could just find.
Right. Well, right now it is on Disney Plus, YouTube, Amazon Prime, Google Play, Apple TV, Fandango, and maybe a couple of others. That's just the one that I'm seeing right now. But yeah, I think this Killer Klowns from Outer Space, I would agree with what you said. I think if you have a nostalgic...
I have a little special something to say about that.
Okay.
Like watching the DVD when I purchased it.
Yeah?
I hadn't purchased or worn glasses before then. I thought DVDs were fuzzy too, just like VHS.
Really? Until your glasses?
Until I got glasses and was like, whoa, there is a difference.
Yeah.
That's so strange, but like it would have been right around that time that I would have started wearing glasses.
Okay.
Got my first eye exam, even though I knew I was blind for a long time. But like these clowns, I like to keep myself in a bubble.
Right.
A little cotton candy cocoon without many people accessing.
Right.
So didn't care to see in front of me, but it was around that time that I realized that DVDs weren't fuzzy like VHS.
Right, they're a little.
too.
Well, if you go back now and you look for like the DVDs, when they came out, a lot of the quality of the DVDs aren't as good as the quality of streaming now.
This is true.
So it's crazy just to realize how far we've come. Yeah, I'd say if you haven't
They're digitally remastered. Is that what you say it?
digitally remastered, yeah.
They are digitally remastered, which is fun, but just by like listening to old albums, some are better to hear it on vinyl,
The way it was.
8-track, the original way.
Yeah.
And you'll get the feel of it better. The DVD, I don't think is much more digitally remastered than the original VHS. I can tell you that by owning it. So if you do find it, you're going to get the same takeaway as watching it like 37 years ago.
Yeah. Now, I do think it's on Tubi. It's on Freebie. If you haven't watched it, please go check it out. Leave a comment below. I think it's a fun way to spend 88 minutes. It's silly. It's goofy. It's ridiculous. But you have a good time. And I think it leaves you with a smile, especially if you appreciate that type of movie. And we don't often do that type of movie on the show.
This is a popcorn movie, for real. Like, grab you a big bowl of popcorn.
Just don't drop the popcorn in your floor. You might be...
tracked.
Yeah.
Don't have any drop on your shirt and stick to you. Those are baby killer clowns.
Yes. So thank you for tuning in to another edition of Real Talk, where we discussed Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Thank you to the guest tonight for bringing that to our attention. Next week, I think we're going to dive into a drama. I'm not sure exactly which one. I've got one in mind. But I'll keep that.
Which one do you have in mind?
I have a movie from 2008. It is a sports drama called The Wrestler, starring Mickey Rourke. And it's one of the best acting movies of the 2010s.
Well, it was very nice being here with you, Adam, but I think I am going to tap out on any Mickey Rourke film called The Wrestler or The Wrestler.
Why
I don't
why
know.
would you tap out of that? It's a character study that really tugs at one's heartstring. Nicolas Cage was originally cast, but he knew that Mickey would do a better job, so he gave up the role to Mickey.
I'm
And it was an Oscar-nominated performance that really is, I said 2010s, but I meant one of the best performances in probably 2008, if I had to say. He lost to Sean Penn for the Harvey Milk movie, but I think it was robbed. So I'm not sure that's what we'll do, but I'm thinking of that. There's been a couple of other people that have mentioned.
maybe people could suggest some other dramas other than that one.
Well, I mean, there was a Good Will Hunting that was also suggested.
Listeners out there, if you could just suggest a better movie, then maybe I could be back next week, or maybe I won't be back next week, and their regular scheduled guests, Jeremiah and David, can be back on the air with you.
See, that's the thing. You take it from it's just a title about a wrestler, but it's not really about that.
I know I'm superficial like that.
It really is.
I'm as superficial as
Aging wrestler-
I'm as superficial as Killer Clowns is from outer space.
Aging wrestler Randy the Ram Robinson is long past his prime, but still ready and raring to go on the pro wrestling circuit. After a bad, brutal beating, Randy hangs up its tights to pursue a serious relationship with a long-in-the-tooth stripper, Marissa Tomei, and tries to reconnect with his estranged daughter, Evan Rachel Wood.
That just seems like
It's sad. It's a sad movie.
Trauma, all of that. Maybe I'm not prepared for that yet.
It is a good movie, though.
Listen,
I would recommend. And I'm not saying that's what
maybe
we'll do,
one day.
but it is summer, and often blockbuster movies are released in the summer. I know Jake and I used to do Blockbuster May a couple times. Actually, when you started watching the show, when it was called On the Movies with Adam and Jake. So
I think I starred in a few of those. Guess whatever was just a guest.
yes, you were a guest, a good guest. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and it's been a fun show tonight. Please check out all the great programming on 92.5 WLSD The Vault, and tune in to all the social, or I don't mean tune in, but go to all the social media, like and subscribe, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, and Facebook, the other people's show.
You forgot about Book of Faces existing.
Yes, I said them out of order. When I say them out of order, it messes me up. So you all have a good night. You want to add anything tonight before we go?
Please check out this movie. One of my top 10 favorites of all time.
Yeah.
Killer Clowns from Outer
Oh,
Space.
it's a top 10 favorite of all time. I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, thank you for suggesting it.
You're very welcome. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.